but Craig won't. So I thought tonight, boy, that's a little louder than usual. It might be because of the fact that I put it in the wrong place on this shirt and I don't have any other place to put it. So this will be the place. That's better right there. Okay, I thought tonight we would have a little discussion, if you guys don't mind. Instead of me preaching, or just give us open up a little bit. How many of you noticed that over the last few months there has been some changes? Yeah. How many of you have heard it said on every television show, every commercial, we're all in this together? Have you heard that? Have you? How many of you really believe it? I'm just curious. We're all in this together. Okay, so we have some that believe that we're all in this together. I think that's certainly good. But I noticed that the commercials that are on television and all of the newscasts seem to have an underlying message that perhaps maybe we ought to give earnest heed to. Because I think the news media, commercials, Hollywood, all of them are telling us something that we should not be taken unaware. We should see it. And perhaps maybe some of you don't know what I'm talking about, but sometimes we need something to shake us up so that we can see, and to wake us up from the fantasy that we've been living in. I mean, most of the time when you talk about end times, people look at you as though you're a stranger and you really have no intelligence. I mean, my goodness sakes, end time prophecy, we've heard it all of our life, don't want to hear it anymore. If COVID-19 has done anything, it has made us aware of the fact that the whole world can shut down in a day. There's no denying that. I mean, the thing is, we could call it a hoax. We can do anything we want to do with it. I will tell you that I would like for you to pray for Bruce Chusler. You all know Big Bruce that sits there in the back. His son has COVID-19, and his son's wife has COVID-19. So just want you to remember them in prayer. I lost, there's a preacher that has been involved with me in many revivals. His wife passed away from COVID-19. A deacon went to visit another member of the church. He caught COVID-19 and he passed away. And the list goes on. And I'd like to point out, before you get all nervous about what I'm going to say, I'd like to point out that just as many people have died from the flu. But I want you to understand, I'm not trying to single out a particular disease and say that this is the worst one we've ever had, because they're talking about these trying times. How many of you have heard that 1,000 times already? These trying times. How many of you have really had a trying time during the COVID-19? I mean, let's think about it for a second. Have you been out of food? The only thing that you've really had to struggle with is toilet paper, I think. Right? That was the only commodity. Matter of fact, I think it was Kim, who I love dearly. She said, Pastor, you told me some time ago to prepare for times like this. And she said, I took you at your word. I canned things. My basement's full of canned foods, and I'm ready to survive. I've got things, I've got all the accoutrement that is necessary to survive. And thank you very much for your timely warning. God bless you, Kim. I appreciate the feedback. But she said, but Pastor, I have somewhat against you. I thought, man, what a surprise. She said, in all the preparation that you told us to be aware of, you never mentioned in all of your prophetic utterances my need for toilet paper. And she's right.
She's got 15
Amen. There are some that believe that toilet paper is the cure of COVID-19. But I knew it. That kid, that rotten kid. You know, Sister Tapman, that sounds like men sometimes would say something like that. It's about that woman you gave me, God. And it's my daughter. It's my rotten daughter. But the thing is, I think all of us have heard time and time again something that's going on. It's an underlying thing. We're all in this together during these trying times. Everybody is now cashing in on that. Every insurance company that's selling insurance and car dealerships, all of these people are saying during these trying times, we need to sell you a car. Now look, I'd like to point out, I'm not even fussing at those people. I know that in order for us to survive in the future, the economy has to be re-energized. By the way, I took my stimulus and I stimulated the economy. I bought stuff that, toilet paper, and gave it to Sister Tapman because I knew I didn't have any need for that. But this pandemic has shown us that our economic and our financial systems are not nearly as stable as we thought that they were. And I got to tell you something, that many of our politicians have been quite eager to embrace socialism and tyranny during this time, these trying times that we're in. It ought to wake us up to something that's going on, some underlying thing. Now, during this pandemic, there has been some shortages of things, you know, like toilet paper, and they're talking about the future. They're talking, and matter of fact, there's like a lawsuit going on right now with some of the meat producers because of the fact that they think that they've been price gouging and increasing the price of meat. One of our chaplains was able to secure either him or his church, one of the two, I'm not really sure how that goes, but a tremendous amount of milk that was going to give away tonight, wasn't it? And so I didn't tell you all because I knew our crowd was going to be down. I didn't want you over at the Nazarene Lake Home Church getting free milk because I knew I wouldn't get you back. But they were giving away milk because these guys have to either give this milk away or they're going to have to throw it away. And yet you go to the grocery store and what do you see? 2 for every customer, you know, and then we'll throw this milk away. There's something wrong underlying. There's something here that we ought to see. Matters of fact, as we saw COVID-19 begin to sweep the nation, if things could degenerate this much during a relatively minor crisis. Now, I know all of you might think that I'm a little crazy to say this is minor. This is not the Spanish flu that came, and we're talking about multiple millions of people died during that time. Millions. Not 100,000, not 200,000, but millions of people died during that time. We seem to forget that. And during the N1H1 virus that came out, again, the number was tremendously higher than what it is right now. And I think that the overall death rate still yet is below 1%. Throughout the whole entire world is still below 1% for COVID-19. And I'm not saying that disease not exists. I know it does. I mean, there's people that get it. I mean, I'm aware of that. But I think also that America has to go back to work. And so if the society begins to have some of the problems that they've had, and they've had some real problems, there's even been riots over little things. You know, here's one of the things that I don't understand in my life. How many of you absolutely, and be honest with me, how many of you feel that pinto beans is the #1 dish for your house? Raise your hand. #1, that's your favorite dish. Ain't nothing like pinto beans. You couldn't find pinto beans. What else couldn't you find in the store? What? Rice. Flour. Cornmeal. Because as soon as people got nervous, there was a run on the stores. And I got to tell you, we have probably the largest producer of toilet paper in the world right here in Ohio, just south of Circleville, in a place called Sofadil, which makes toilet paper for a multitude. It could be, but I only like Charmin. Let me tell you something. In a pandemic, newspaper, leaves, corn cobs that have been taken care of. Because I will tell you that when I was a young boy, there were a little basket of corn cobs in an outhouse that we had to frequent. Now, I'm going to tell you, for me, it wasn't that big a problem because it was there. I think for women, it would be a lot worse. I don't know, because I've never been a woman. That's part of my humility. I've never. But I could see why that would be a difficulty. But I would just say, though, that in a real situation, because we look at this COVID-19, it's like this has been the worst. I don't know that it really has. None of us has probably missed a meal during this time. No, I would say not. How many of you have noticed that you've actually put on weight during the COVID-19 virus? Yeah, because we got nothing to do, so we sit at home and we eat copious amounts of things. Like, for instance, I was on a diet before COVID-19 happened. I was on a diet, for crying out loud. Losing weight, looking svelte. Cute as could be, I ain't a kidding. So here I am, losing weight, COVID hits, and I said, Jill, we need peanuts, and we need potato chips. We need this, and we need cake mixes. We don't have it. We got to get to cake mix and stuff. And I may not be the only one person that has suffered during the COVID-19. Not of starvation, but of overeating. And I was on a diet. See, that's the whole thing that I can't get in my head. Is why am I on the diet? I'm doing good. I'm looking svelte. No problems. COVID hits and I must eat. I have to have biscuits. Why? During this pandemic, COVID caused, and people don't even know this. They think it's all lungs. It's not. It involves the belly. It sets up a hunger down on the inside. Let me go on. It doesn't really. If you haven't figured it out by now, I want you to understand something. The coronavirus is definitely not an end of the world scenario. Are you following me on this? I want you to get that, because the next part of this series, if I get a chance to do a series, by the way, did you know, how many of you have any idea what the total death rate was for the Spanish flu pandemic, 1918, 1920? Any of you got an idea? Give me an idea of people that died. The estimation is somewhere between 50 to 100 million that died during that time. You see, we can't even fathom that. This virus certainly has killed people. Most people were already probably going to die anyway. Please don't take this out of, you know what? Hold on, folks. Those of you that are watching this, I am not trying to downplay this. I'm just saying that there has been a tremendous change in how we quantitate information. If a person dies of COPD, in the past we would say COPD, but now if they also had COVID-19, that becomes part of the comorbidity, and it's placed on there, and it gets the preeminent spot. So a person that may have died from heart disease, or may have died from COPD, may have died from diabetes, may have died from all of these things, but if he had COVID, it's going to be COVID that killed him. That's not true. It's not what happened. COVID is bad, and it certainly does add to that person's that person's death rate. There's no doubt about it. But it is not the same level as some of the other things that we've had to deal with. But that's the good news, I guess, right? I'm going to get into the bad news in a minute. The bad news is that lockdowns were instituted by our political leaders, and they burst all of our economic bubbles and have completely wrecked the global economy. because of decisions that were made. And I'm not fussing at our president right now. I think he made the best decisions he possibly can, and he took the greatest risk ever when he said, I want the churches to reopen. Because I got to tell you, if a lot of people come down with the coronavirus now, it's going to be remembered at election time. And they said that there is a very high probability index that the unemployment rate is still going to be exceedingly high at the time that our president is going to be either reelected or lose the election to somebody that I cannot understand. I was listening to the news reports talking about his latest gaffe. What is his name again? Oh, yes, Joe Biden, who said, if you don't vote Democrat, you're not really black. And if any Republican ever said that, that would be chaos all over the place. But it's okay, and everybody made excuses for this man to be able to say some of the things he said that is absolutely ludicrous. But and I'm not talking about the fact that our President Trump is the best there is. I got to tell you something. If I would never hire him as a Sunday school teacher, I would not. But I think that he's had a great deal of respect, more so than any president we've had in a long time for the church. And I am thankful for that. In the United States, more than 38 million Americans have lost their jobs so far. And over 100,000 businesses have been permanently shut down during this COVID-19. Folks, I'm telling you, these numbers are going to come back to haunt us soon. Let me throw this out. You know, we're putting together those green pages, and some of you have talents and you haven't filled that out. Listen, I don't know if you're going to go back to work to the place you used to work. You don't know that that place is going to be there. I'm telling you, the whole world is changing, and we need to depend on each other. So may I suggest that you fill out that, if you have a skill level. The only thing that I have is I can take a good blood pressure, listen to your heart. If there was some problem, I'd be able to pick it out. I'm pretty good at that stuff. It's the only thing I got going for me. I am not what you call mechanically inclined. I'm telling you, whatever parts that's supposed to go together, there'll always be at least a couple more left at the end than they started with. But I am not that person, but other people are. Fill out those papers. Tell people what you can do. I'm going to keep pushing that because I really think we're going to need it in the future. And I know a lot of people haven't filled it out. And just recently, the magnificent, fabulous Baker boys had tools. All of our tools are busted. They are gas-operated nightmares. I tried to fix mine, and Andy said, give me the wrench and go sit down. I said, well, no. And so I found somebody at the church that does small engine repair. I am very thankful for that. Have another guy that, Danny, you're going to have to work a lot of overtime, because I found another guy that does general labor repairs, you know, like, and we need a man door, and we need a storm door, and you need your roof fixed. I'm there for you. A 100,000 businesses have been permanently lost, and it's projected that the U.S. gross domestic product will fall by 40% during the second quarter. 40%. If millions of people were dropping dead all over the planet, the level of the fear that we are witnessing would be understandable. But millions of people aren't dropping dead, and this crisis has turned out to be mostly fear. It really has. But the fear has done a terrible thing, because I got to tell you, people were, and I'm not fussing, please. I don't know how to tell you this. There are some people that are scared of this virus, and it's okay. It's all right. I want you to understand, I'm not fussing at you. There are people that can't come to church because they're afraid that they're going to get it because they are compromised physically. They should stay at home. I don't have a problem with that. I want you to understand that. But then there's others that says you shouldn't care about those people. At what point can a pastor not care about his flock? You tell me that, because I don't know how to answer that question. I care for this one just as much as I care for the militant one that says, if you weren't such a coward, none of this stuff would have ever happened. I got to tell you something. I did not cause COVID-19 that I know of. But I'm telling you, a shepherd is interested in this sheep just as much as he's interested in another sheep. They said, well, no, Pastor. No, listen to what I'm trying to tell you. Their opinion is just as valid. What I was talking to several preachers, and they said to me, they said, Pastor, if this whole thing was a test for the church failed the test. We have learned not to love one another when we should have loved one another even more so than we ever have before. We have learned not to care for another person's opinion. We should care about one another. The Bible said to be careful of one another's happiness. Oh, no, let me go on. I feel your angst already. Ultimately, if we look back on this relatively minor event compared to the horrific pandemics that have happened in the past, and that experts assure us eventually are coming our way, and they're on their way, there is a scripture, and I can't remember exactly how it's worded. If somebody wants to look it up for me, I'd appreciate it. It says, you did run with the footmen, and they wearied you. What are you going to do at the coming of the horses and the swelling of the Jordan? In other words, if you have fallen apart with this little bit of something that's coming our way, what are you going to do when you remember that this was a walk in the park to what's on our way? Let me just say, I still believe, and some of you think that I was crazy 3.5 years ago, when I told you we had to pay off the church. I'm glad that I listened to me. But most of all, I'm glad I listened to him, because he said, you got 3 years to pay this thing off. And we did it. And we talked about storing things and putting food up. And people did it. Did you find it already?
Jeremiah 12:5.
Could you read that out loud, my brother?
If thou hast run with the footmen, and they have wearied thee, then how canst thou contend with horses? And if in the land of peace wherein thou trustest they wearied thee, then how wilt thou do in the swelling of Jordan?
Notice that there's a sequence of events that happened. One is preparation to get you ready. One is worse, but you are ready, better ready. And then one says, all the rest of them was a walk in the park, because now we have the swelling of the Jordan, and the waters are rushing, cascading, hurting every which way. So all I'm saying is, if we look back on this relatively minor thing that we're going through right now, and I got to tell you, relatively, it's been an inconvenience, but it hasn't been a disaster. It has been an inconvenience, but it's not been a disaster. But again, I don't want you to think that I'm saying that if a person is fearful of the time that they're in, that there's something wrong with them spiritually. They're not. They are getting the same information that you're getting, and they process it a different way, but that doesn't make them worse. That doesn't make them less. I hope that you're getting all of this, because I have a notion that when this goes out, I forgot we do Wednesday nights too now. I really should have been just talking to the church, because I really don't want anybody that wants to write me, write to Bob Butler, care of the church, 15598 McClellan Road, because I'm using Bob's notes right now, and I'm lying right before you. And I'm going to get into trouble for that. That's why I don't have humility, but humor may be one of the things that I'm remembered for. Let me just go on. Don't get rid of any protective equipment that you've acquired. You're going to need it. It wasn't wasted. Just hold on to it. Things are coming. I think it may have been you who told me to get the straw. Was it you that told me that?
Oh, yeah. The drinking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I got one for me, and I got one for Jill. It does 1,000 gallons of water. I can take that straw and put it in a mud hole, drink it right out of the mud hole, and it's 99.9% fresh. Little straw. Got her one because I'm not drinking after her. Huh?
You'll drink out of a mud hole?
Yeah, no. Some of us will not see tomorrow. I know who it's going to be. But for now, there's absolutely no reason why any U.S. state should still have restrictions in place. And you say, preacher, that is the most unreasonable statement you could make. As long as Kroger's, Menards, Lowe's, and all of the rest of these places are open, it is not a quarantine. You have more chance of getting the Walmart disease, which requires you, as soon as you get there, to start dressing down, than you are getting COVID-19 at the church. Now, that being said, if somebody gets it here, everything that I've said tonight will be remembered forever, and it'll probably be the thing that takes me out as pastor. Because they said, preacher, you did not warn us, you didn't, and that's true. I didn't. But I want you to understand that there are so many restrictions in place that if we try to reboot our economy right now, they're telling us it's going to be next year before the economy can be rebooted. That's pretty scary. In fact, the White House economic advisor, Kevin Hazzard, says that we could see the official unemployment rate hit 22 or 23% by the end of May. Have I done something wrong that you guys are talking? No, you're making me paranoid schizophrenic, so if I've done something wrong, you need to tell me what it is. No? Okay. Oh, her. Yes, I'm used to that, so it doesn't bother me any. Kevin Hazzard, who's the chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors, has warned that the unemployment rate, which hit 14.7% in April, is probably going to go to 22 to 23% before June is over, and we'll see a very bad number by, and maybe by June it will start to head in the right direction. That's what they're hoping for. This gentleman told CNN, and adding that he believes a fourth stimulus bill meant to staunch coronavirus-induced economic pain is coming sooner rather than later. I guess that they were talking about doing another stimulus for people. I don't know what it was. Somebody said $600 or something, was it? Anybody hear that? Am I making this up, or it's just... Oh, okay, I'm making it up. Well, that's all right then. During the same interview, he even admitted that it's likely that we will still be facing double-digit unemployment when we go to vote in November. And that's important for us to remember, because one of the things that I think that this thing was to do was to make this economy die so that our president could not possibly win the next election. Because the people that have, I mean, if you're taking somebody like Joe Biden, and I can't imagine him being the head of the United States of America when that man can't even put a sentence together. So I don't know why, but there are some people that think it's okay to be in a political party that believes it's okay to kill babies. And it's okay that no matter what God said about homosexuality, it needs to be thrown out. And if that's the party of your choice, may the Lord bless you, God keep you somehow, and somewhere maybe you might get saved. And I'm going to get into trouble for that when I figure if I'm going to get into trouble, I might as well go all the way. So what we are facing right now is far worse than anything that we faced during the last recession. We need to understand that. And we will continue to have very high unemployment and in the foreseeable future, and even greater concern over the tyrannical way that things are being done. I am concerned. I don't know how valid this is, because there's always a lot of false news out there, but somebody said that the health department is going to be involved in gun control. I don't know if anybody else heard this. Did anybody else hear this? Those of you that may have heard this, one, two. Amy Acton in charge. Okay, well, we will do some more research on this. I got to tell you something. The Department of Health being in charge of gun control is about as ludicrous as I can imagine. I would rather the police department be in charge of gun control. It seems to me that they would understand a little bit more about gun control than anybody else. And as far as I know, the police are not absolutely unequivocally opposed to conceal and carry. Huh?
We want to be in charge of that.
No, well, you guys are in charge of enough, I'm sure. I never would have imagined so many governors would be so eager to fully embrace tyranny during a crisis, but it seems that they have. Most of us can look to what happened in Michigan and you get a pretty good picture. Some of them even seem to revel in trampling on the rights of others. And it's been extremely alarming to watch because it is a precursor of what's going to happen if famine does come to America. Remember, if they did this with the footmen, can you imagine what it's going to be like at the swelling of the Jordan? I think for years, many freedom-loving candidates tried to run for public office all over the nation, but the American people kept rejecting them and kept electing ultra-corrupt career politicians instead. And now that's coming back to roost and hurt us. It's hurting us dearly. Now, by the way, this whole entire thing that I'm trying to introduce to you tonight is about prophecy, by the way. If you haven't figured it out yet. But what I'm concerned about is this is America, and I don't know that in the future, if something worse should happen than the pandemic that we are in right now, I don't know that it'll be called the land of the free anymore. When people can make decisions that they've made. Now, I will say that our governor never said that he would close these churches down. Matters of fact, he said, I would appreciate your help. And so we voluntarily tried to do that. And it wasn't just the Christian church, but it is all houses of worship, whatever particular religious affiliation that there is, all of them. He asked them to please consider closing your doors so that we can keep the curve a little lower. We did that. And I think we were successful. We were helpful. But in all of this, all of a sudden now, and you'll notice it on the commercials and things that are being played on a regular basis, there is an undercurrent that is coming our way that seems like everybody else knows what's best for us. And we have to be careful with that because we turn over any more to our government and there won't be nothing left of us. I am personally, I guess I know some people that just recently went to the park, and we'll just won't talk about names and stuff, just go to the park, just to be out, to get out. Didn't they tell us that if we got out and walked around, it'd be good for us? So if you go to the park, you certainly wouldn't be expected to leave the park because you might catch the corona. I don't know how many trees has the COVID virus. I don't know. And, there's probably that one COVID tree. I don't know, but and asked to leave. I think that some of our leaders have been anxious to embrace social power. Even we never think about it, but socialism, and what do they call it when we separate ourselves one from another? Social distancing. Did any of you happen to catch the video of the woman that inadvertently in Staten Island walked into a grocery store without a mask? Any of you catch it? She was chased out of the store. She was called every imaginable filthy name and chased out of the store because she didn't have a mask. And by the way, the mask, if I wear a mask, it is to protect you. But up here, I can't, because if I talk, I can't spit, and I need to spit on you. But the mask that I wear is not for my protection. It's for yours. That's what it's for, okay? So all these people, every one of them had a mask on. They chased her out. Well, let me go on. So we've had shortages of toilet paper during this horrendous situation. Sanitizer. Why sanitizer? They said this is something you need. We couldn't find masks. Why? Because it's something you need. We couldn't find meat in places. Why? Because it's something you need. Frozen pizza. Who would have thunk it? I mean, you go to these grocery stores and you go open it. There's 7,000 different brands of frozen pizza. I went to the grocery store and there wasn't any frozen pizza. Because that's the miracle food for COVID-19 to help us gain weight. Whenever we wait for everybody else to realize that there's a full-blown crisis that's going on, it's too late to do anything. That's why the church needs to have a pantry that is big enough to feed our own people and to rotate the food in and out of there. We need to do that. We need to start it right now, because I don't know that we have 3 years this time to compare for the next one that's coming, but there is a next one coming, and I really think the next one is going to be famine. And if you've seen what's happened with COVID-19, can you imagine when people think that the food supply, and we're going to talk about that during this little series that I'm talking about, why the food supply or the food chain may be interrupted. This shortage that we've witnessed during 2020 is nothing compared to what is eventually coming, whenever that is. The thing is, there is information that's coming about famine that are beginning to emerge around the globe from the United Nations, openly warning that hundreds of millions of people could be facing acute food shortages by the end of this calendar year. What? No, that's sometime in the future, in the distance, a long way from now. No, they're predicting by the end of this calendar year. So it's time to prepare, church, again. I know you're tired. I mean, I got to tell you something. We needed a preacher that's a little bit more happy than I am. That's why I've got this sense of humor. I can tell you that disaster's coming with a smile upon my face. I don't know. The United Nations is warning the world of a looming food shortage as a result of the ongoing coronavirus epidemic. What? How's that stopping us from getting groceries? But it's interrupting the food supply. Most of you know that one of the largest chicken producers had 900, I think, employees that tested positive for COVID-19. Shut it down. Another meat packing place, same thing, shut it down. Another place, shut it down. During World War II, it was a bad time. But when things got shut down, the government said, let's reopen. I don't care what it is, you reopen it. People started making stuff that they had never made before. Ford Motor Company started making different things than they had ever made before. Many of you have heard of K-rations, right? You've heard of K-rations. Do you know where that got its origin from? Who made it? Huh? Kellogg's. K-rations. You know, they started, it's no longer just cereal, but they said, we need to be involved here. Usually whenever there is a situation, people step up, not shut down. Step up. We need to step up in America again and get jobs back and start working again. And I know that there's, the folks are going to be a little aggravated with me tonight for sure, and I don't blame you. I would too. I don't think I've said anything that is just happy-go-lucky tonight. You should have had Andy, because last week he was very tearful, very nice, gave you a little bit of his heart. Me, I get up here and say, tomorrow may not come. There's a world of difference between us. Not really. It's just sometimes my time to shine. So I guess we need to look in what the Scripture says. Huh? And that's how much time do I have now? Because You mean to tell me I've taken, it'll be 15 after? You know, you do better than I do now that I think about it. That's, Do you think maybe, and listen carefully to what I'm saying, could it be possible that the stage is being set for the horrific famines that the Bible has been warning us about for over 2,000 years? Wow, is that possible? A few years ago, any discussion about the coming famine would have been considered ludicrous. People would have said, listen, we are the, the breadbasket of the world. Not so now. By the way, globalism is not really happy for America. It's not a good thing. Globalism, whenever you have most of your stuff made overseas, you're in trouble. We have a bigger portion of our medicines that are made in China. All of that stuff needs to come back to America. I was trying to find, I found a couple of pairs of shoes that I buy because they're American. They're a little bit more expensive, but they're American. I found some underpants the other day that are American. I was really happy with that because everybody else's is made in Bangladesh. Quite frankly, I don't like the people in Bangladesh having my underpants. There, see? That might have made you feel a little better. You know, recently one of the speakers at the United Nations used this term, and I think it's important for us to get it. He said this: there is the possibility of famines coming our way of biblical proportions. That surprised me that he would say biblical proportions. From this is the numbers they gave, because it's, and maybe I'm wrong, and I hope that I am, and I hope they are. But the numbers that they reported during this time, during this conversation they had about food production, they could see as many as 300,000 people literally starving to death every single day. What? Now that's a lot worse now than what we're talking about, and that's not some disease, famine. It is, or COVID-19, but a famine, no food available. And so you say, well, I don't see how that could happen. Well, has anybody noticed that we do have a change in the weather? I mean, we could talk about global warming, and people say that's a hoax. We can talk about all kinds of stuff. But let me tell you something. God said this. He said, if my people will do what I've asked them to do, I will rebuke the devourer, and if they don't, I won't. I'm probably going to have to replant my entire garden because the rains came and washed it all out as soon as I planted it. It's a small thing. It is a small thing because I'm a small farmer. But they're talking about nightmares of droughts that are happening across the world right now. Here's the thing that we don't hear anything about: African swine fever. Have you heard? We've heard of the swine fever or swine flu, right? And now African swine fever, COVID-19, armies of locusts in Africa the size of major cities have combined to create a perfect storm, and global food supplies are become tighter with each passing month. Now they've already told us that we can expect some beef to be scarce and chicken to be scarce. It's coming our way. But that's a nice way of saying it. Now, I'm saying all this, we're not into the prophecy yet. It's just all just laying it out for you to think about. And how many of you would like for me to stop as soon as possible? Are you really just disgusted with this already? Because I can't tell. I can't even see you back there. And it's not because of my glasses. It's because that light right there, it's right in my eye. So I can't see you. But you can see me. I'm telling you what, being the pastor of this church, all I have to do is mention a little something. You are an amazing man. You all are much better looking now. Before, you just looked like bright spots. And I thought for a while it was some other condition I had. As conditions continue to deteriorate, people are beginning to wonder now if certain prophetic passages in the Bible are starting to come to fruition. I don't know how many phone calls I've received that starts this way. Pastor Baker, what's going on? What do you think is going on? What do you think is happening? You see, folks, this thing that we're talking about, and I'm sure I'm out of time, aren't I? Really? This thing that I'm talking about tonight, people will say, well, I got to tell you, all of this stuff that you're dealing with right now is a prelude to what is coming. And if we're failing to test at the little trials that we have right now, I got to tell you, we're not going to do well in the future. Matthew 24:7 says Jesus specifically warned that there would be famines in the last days, immediately preceding his return. He said it this way, for nation shall rise against nation. Is that something that we have? Nation against nation? Yes. Will it get worse if there's famine? Famine causes war. War causes more famine. Famine causes more pestilence. Pestilence causes more famine. More famine causes more war. And it continues until it becomes very dark indeed. Kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be. He did not say there could be. He said there shall be famines. There shall be famines and pestilence and earthquakes in divers or many places. Right now in the world, it is like a harvest of earthquakes, more so than at any time in our past. Diseases, swine fever, Ebola, COVID-19, N1, S1, S1N1, M1R1, whatever it is. It goes on and on and on. And we can find very similar warnings from Jesus in Mark chapter 13 and Luke chapter 21. So if we're actually living during the time just before the return of Jesus, and I believe we are, then we should expect to see horrifying global famines to emerge. And that is what we're beginning to witness right now. Now, I've said a lot of very frightening things, and some of you may not like what I've said, and I get it, I understand. I don't particularly care for it either, but I think that it's time to warn the church again, because I think it's time for the church to wake up to the fact that this is just the beginning, and there's more to come. But can the church be ready, and can the church be safe during that time? I believe they can. That's what I want to talk to you over the next, we'll talk about prophecy, but we're going to talk about how the church can position itself to be safe. There's a couple of things you need. Just something to think about. One is you need to be proactive. That means that you need to take very careful consideration of things you hear during this little series of messages. That's number one. Number two, some of you need to be baptized in the Holy Ghost. Now, I know that's not a Baptist doctrine, but I'm telling you, some of us really need to understand that this God of ours said, because you have kept the word of my patience, I will keep thee from the hour of great temptation that shall come upon all the earth to try them that dwell upon the earth. Now I got to tell you, the Bible talks about the elect. That's a little bit different. Some of you remember that Jesus said that, John said it this way. He said, I indeed baptize thee with water. You all familiar with this scripture? One cometh after me, whose shoelaces I am not worthy to unloosen, who will baptize you with what? With what? Holy Ghost, but what else? With fire in the Holy Ghost. I got to tell you something. I don't know that we have gotten to the fire yet. Now, please, I know I'm running out of time. I didn't want to because there's so much I want to talk about tonight, but the fire, I'm telling you that we need to have a burning down on the inside to get closer to Him, to be obedient to what He has to say, so that we can prepare ourselves for the next thing that we're going to need, and that is the presence of the Holy Ghost that will comfort us. He said, I want to send you a comforter, right? A comforter. Fire and comfort. Don't you think that's something we're going to need for the day? Fire and comfort. That works out really well. If you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that your God is on the throne, if you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that Christ is the Lord, if you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that God has got you in the hollow of your hand, there is not a demon out of hell that can take you during this time. And if the church is failing right now with this little bit of stuff that's come our way, what are we going to do? Because the Jordan is swelling right now. It is swelling right now. So I need to finish this evening. If you want to leave $1 up here, it goes to charity. We'll be sending those dollars out pretty soon, though. I'm going to start asking you to bring in money, and that money is going to go to the pantry. And you say, well, that doesn't sound like a mission. Oh, yes, it's going to be a mission. But this time, it's going to be a mission to the ones that I'm looking at. Until we get a handle on where we need to position the church. So, and by the way, I would like to point out, and I want to put this one little codicil on there, because I think if I am wrong in anything that I'm teaching you, I am going to be the first to rejoice. Because if I'm wrong, it ain't coming. And if it ain't coming, you don't need to worry. But if it's coming and we're prepared, you still don't need to worry. So let's do what we can. Remember, God's got us. Looking at y'all's faces tonight, I don't know where you are. You're either been overthrown, or wondering why we can't have that other sweet-speaking man up here again. Well, actually, this is entirely James's fault. Yeah, he was supposed to speak tonight, but he got a job, and I want him to keep it in case I need money. So, but he did. He got a big project that came in, so praise the Lord for that. That's a good thing. Of course, I'm in season and out of season, and you know I've been preparing this now for the last 3 months, so I've had all this time. 2 months. I've had people filling in for me. I've had all this extra time. So now I want to dump it on you. I feel good about it. So leave your $1 up here, and God will bless you for it.
All right.
I tell you something, Bob. You're an encourager. You really are.
Well, I try.
You do.
Follows me, though.
No,